Happy Monday, everyone, and welcome to Downtown Rotary on this absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous October day. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, I can't be heard. Can you hear me now? Welcome, everyone. It is still an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous October morning. Glad you're all with us for Downtown Rotary. Now, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome Andy Patterson up to do our invocation. Andy?
Please bow with me. Dear Lord, we do thank you for this beautiful day you've created and the opportunity to gather together with friends. Lord, I pray that as we hear the program today, that we would learn and better understand how we care for all of your creation and all those you've created in your image. We thank you for those that are doing that work daily, the hard work of caring for our loved ones, and we just thank you and ask a blessing upon them. We ask you to be with us as Rotarians as we go out trying to make an impact, that you would give us wisdom, you would guide our steps. In your name we pray, amen.
Thank you so much. And a thank you to our greeters in the back. It's always fun to get a chance to say hello and stay connected with folks as they come in today. We also have a couple of Rotary guests with us. Dwayne Walk, you want to give a wave, Dwayne? As we all know, is part of one of our other Rotary clubs, Rotary West. He is selling raffle tickets for that Rotary. I think it got talked about a little bit last week, but if anyone's interested in buying a raffle ticket or knowing a little bit more about what those dollars are going to do, Dwayne's your guy. So connect with Dwayne before you go. I also want to welcome Jean Costello. Did I see Jean come in? Where's Jean at? Jean, thank you for being here at Rotary today. Glad to have you. Our junior Rotarians are not with us today. They are having the day off from school, but they'll be back with us again next week. I'd like to now have the opportunity to have a few member inductions. First, I'll invite up Laura Mitchell to introduce our new member.
Morning, everyone. I want to introduce someone I just got to know over the last few weeks. Jimmy, or Chingmeng Chu, moved here from Minnesota late 2019, right before the pandemic, after retiring, but he has such a painted career that I want to bring up notes so I don't forget all of his accomplishments. He's an independent investor currently residing in Sioux Falls and an advisory board member of Connect IQ, which is a startup in Minnesota. He's a leader and was an executive at various companies. He was the vice president of global treasury at Ecolab, the assistant treasurer at Medtronic, the VP and CFO at Spectra Science, treasurer of SciMed Life Systems Incorporated, and the vice president of international banking at Wells Fargo. Lots of stuff. He's passionate about volunteering, especially in education, investments, health, and well-being. He was on the board of trustees of Hamline University, was a board member of Minnesota Institute for Talented Youth, and board member of Milestone Growth Fund. He enjoys the outdoors, golf, running, bicycling, skiing, hiking, and fishing. Also enjoys concert, good food, and a fun time. So I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about him, anything I didn't cover, but it's been a real pleasure to get to know you over these last few months. Welcome to Rotary.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate it very much. I really want to thank her for taking sponsoring me to join this very well-respected club. And I also want to thank the Downtown Rotary Club for accepting me, a humble person, to be part of the club. So I thank you very much. I don't want to prolong this and make it long because we have a lot of guests who are much better at speaking than I am. However, I just want to make sure that you know that I will always try my best to uphold all the tenets of the Rotary organization and live up to the high standards and expectations. I do believe that in life, there are a few things that you must always hold as your core principles, and there are many which I have, but I think the thing that applies to this club is Number one, 80% of your success is showing up. So I intend to show up a lot if I can, okay? Second thing is that enthusiasm for doing something makes a lot of difference. So I always do a lot of things in my life with great enthusiasm, including golf, which is very true. I scored 97 yesterday. So you know that I golf with a lot more enthusiasm than skill. And the third thing is that I always try to have fun whenever I can. So I would like to, if possible, get to know every one of you and work with every one of you, in the course of my membership at Rotary. Thank you.
We're so glad to have your enthusiasm as part of our club. Thank you for joining us. Dan Clipley, you have a member induction as well.
Thanks, President-elect Cindy and fellow Rotarians. Today, I have the opportunity to introduce Bob Weiser, the founder and chairman of Weiser Distributing out of Tea, South Dakota. I met Bob several years ago, and we instantly became friends. Bob started Weiser Distributing in 1978, and his family-owned business has seen phenomenal growth since 2010 when his son Eric joined him. I'm confident Bob will share Weiser Distributing's success. A lot of its success is based on its core values, those of being visionary, team-orientated, problem-solving, accountability, autonomous, integrity, and people come first. With that, I'm going to let Bob share a little bit about his business and his family. But please welcome our newest member, Bob Weiser.
When you speak of it, it's always sounds better than the real thing anyway. So my wife told me to take some bullet points because I could speak all day long and you'd be bored to death. But I wouldn't be. So anyway, I'm from Tripp, South Dakota. We own Weiser. Our family owns Weiser Distributing. My wife, Kathy, and my son, Eric and Jill. We've been in business since '78, but Eric came in about 10, 11 years ago. He's kind of the smart one of the bunch, and the things that we built on for the last 35 years, it helped us get started, and he scaled it very nicely. Our daughter and son-in-law came in the business a couple of years later than that. Now we got about 200 employees in Tea, Sioux Falls, and Vegas. So that's been very successful. I'm happy as hell there. So now I got to, so they help me. They help me. Once you just go back and retire someplace, sit in the back row, keep your mouth shut. So it's a little tough to do. So I got to figure out what to do with the second half of my life. So Rotary would be one of the things I'm joining, as just like Jimmy said, to be an active member, not to be holding a chair, an empty chair in that space there. I think I can thank Dwayne Walk for suggesting this 3 or 4 times through Hope Haven Ministries. Are both on the same board, and they get involved through giving away wheelchairs through Rotary. And Rotary's been very good for him because he was a worthless bum before this. I know that. And then Dan Kipley finally put the nail. I said, you should just join. So I want to thank you both for pushing me there. So otherwise, I don't know if there's anything else left on my list. It's probably enough. So thank you all for I'm glad such an esteemed organization can have a guy like me. So thank you very much for letting me in.
I'd like to invite our newest inductees and sponsors for a picture here in a moment. While I do that, Joel, if you and our panelists would like to join us on the stage. And now time for our program, Innovation in Aging. Rotarian Joel Dykstra, I'll let you kind of tee us up, introduce our panelists, and take it away.
Well, thank you, Cindy. That was very well done. I always thought that the dead time while we took the photos of the new members needed some background music or something, and so using that time to shuffle us up here was a brilliant addition. Look, I wanted to talk to the group today. I think we're very honored to have these two professionals here to talk about the changes in the world of elder care and that industry and the need that we have. Darla Van Rosendale is CEO of Rummel Village, and she'll, I'm sure, tell us more about that. And Mike Bankowski, who's owner of Prosperous Home Health and Prosperous Robotics, and we'll talk more about how that plays into the topic here in just a couple of minutes. First of all, let me just set the scene here a little bit. The topic has relevance, or in my own experience, I've come to kind of tell the eras of my life by what the kind of predominant conversation topics are in when we're socializing or people of my own age. There was a time a few years ago where I recognized that, you know, we were all kind of living through our kids in high school. This is a group of friends of mine, and then that led to the transition to their college experience and our empty nest, which was a joy. And then, you know, everybody kind of turned 50 and we started talking about colonoscopies, medical ailments and other sorts of things that came up. But then the last, most recent transition, just about every conversation we have is about elderly parents and the care that we're customers of that in that industry and what challenges we face. And so that's kind of the transition and the life change that's taken place. And through that experience in my own, my dad passed away about a year ago. And in the last 3 years of his life, we had transitioned through just about every stage of elder care that you can mention. And I'm sure we'll talk about that as we go on today. So Darla, I'd like to just open it up a little bit, ask you to maybe introduce, for any of those here who are not familiar with Rummel, maybe you can talk a little bit about your organization and just how you see the demographics and the demand side of the industry changing in the past few years and in the few years to come.
Sure. Rummel Village is a life plan community, which means we offer all levels of care. So I'm familiar with senior living to assisted living to memory care to nursing home. I've been a part of senior living for about 24 years, and it's been interesting to watch how things have changed in senior living during those years. The type of person that we take care of in the nursing home today is a resident that you would probably see as a patient in the hospital 10, 15 years ago. The people that we take care of in assisted living today are residents that 10, 15 years ago we would have taken care of in the nursing home. And so each level of care has evolved and has grown over the years, and I'm expecting continue to do so. With home health becoming a great option for people at home, it means that they're going to wait longer to come to assisted living, which means their care will be even higher when they come to assisted living. So the demand and the need for the levels of care continue to grow each level of the way, from home health to assisted living to nursing home.
So you mentioned the home health option, and that kind of brings us to the part of the industry that Mike represents. Mike, tell us how you see, how you came to be involved in the home health service and what you've seen over the last few years in your business.
So I've only been in long-term care for about 10 years. But it's something that is in my blood and in my family. My mom was a nurse at the VA for 35 years. She also worked part-time at nursing homes. And she was a single mom. And so when I wanted to see my mom, I was going to the VA or the nursing home. So as a young kid, I got to see it early on. And I loved interacting with residents, hanging out with vets. I remember when I turned 16, I had a pretty good growth spurt in puberty, and my voice got really low, which they loved for bingo. I became very popular around the VA to call bingo because they could all hear the numbers clearly. But I was the black sheep of the family. I was a financial advisor, and so that's why I've only been in the industry for about 10 years. And my mom passed away in 2009, and my older brother, who worked at Avera, passed away in 2011 from a car accident. And so that's when I made the change to long-term care, became a nursing home administrator, and did that for a couple of years, but really saw that the future was, at least in my eyes, was in home health. That typically when you get a man coming to the nursing home in his 80s, that is the last place they want to be. They come kicking and screaming. They don't want to be at the nursing home. They want to be in their home, in their chair that they've sat in for the last 30 years. And I kept seeing that over and over again. And so that's when I decided to start a home health agency in 2014, was really I saw that the future was really shifting, that aging in place was becoming extremely popular. And if it's possible, that's where everyone wants to be. I also had a personal experience with home health with my grandma. So like I said, my mom was a single mom, and so grandma was involved in a lot of watching over me. And so I spent a lot of time with grandma, and I was her favorite, which always helps, to the chagrin of my cousins, still to this day. But my grandma ended up having cancer. And because my mom was a nurse, and my grandma wanted to stay in her home, that's what she did. And that was in the early 90s. It was kind of, it was different back then. It didn't happen very often. And so I remember having my grandma in the house, and I would even change her feeding tube for her, and I would provide cares for her. And she ended up taking her last breath right in her living room with her family surrounding her. And I thought, this is the way to go. And so that kind of also pushed me into the home health side, because I've had personal experiences with it. I see the beauty of being able to stay in the home forever. And that's what we're trying to do with Prosperous Home Health.
Darla, can you give us a little bit of an indication of what you've seen with the demographics and the statistics on aging? I don't think it's just me, but it seems like the population is getting older.
It is. The population is continuing to grow, Joel. Recent figures that I saw just a couple of weeks ago at our South Dakota Healthcare Association convention, Mark Parkinson's, the president of the American Healthcare Association, shared some demographics that by 2040, so in less than 20 years, the population of 80 and older will have doubled from what we have today. And so we'll have over 13 million 80 and older in the United States in less than 20 years. And that means that it will take a broad spectrum of businesses to be able to meet the needs of all of those aging population.
And so here in Sioux Falls, we are blessed with a number of service providers. What is the population, or what is the census at Dow Rummel?
As far as
how many people are you?
So at Dow Rummel, we have about 300 residents that we serve. About 40% of those are independent living, and the rest are in assisted living or nursing home care. So we average right around 300 to 310.
Mike, how many people does Prosperous Home Health serve?
Right now, we're right around 80, but that is really because of needing to be at 80 on a staffing level. I've had to, this year I've had to say no more than I've ever had to, just because I haven't had staff to take care of them.
Well, that's a common subject. That brings up a common subject that I think many of our members in their businesses and all of the industries, both here in Sioux Falls and just about everywhere else, is experiencing, which is stress on the labor side, staffing, hiring, retaining people. Darla, how is that affecting your daily challenges at Dow Rummel?
We started to see it affecting us a little bit before the pandemic, but that certainly has gotten much more difficult with the demands during the pandemic and the testing, the stress of taking care of the residents and trying to keep them safe. Now with vaccine mandates coming, that just kind of makes it even more of a challenge. We have been staff challenged off and on throughout the 18 months. Never to the level where we have had to say no to someone moving in to Dow Rummel. But I know that in South Dakota, 50% of the nursing homes have at some point in the last year had to say no to admissions because they didn't have the staffing levels required per our regulations. And you certainly need to follow those regulations or be susceptible to civil money penalties during a survey. So you have to watch that closely. And that becomes a huge challenge when you have to say no to people needing nursing home or assisted living care.
Yeah. And Mike, what are the options for people if you and other companies like yours can't provide care, if they can't find a place in one of the other facilities in town? What do they do?
You know, it really goes back to family. Family's the next option. So either a spouse or children. And and I've seen, you know, really over the past 3 or 4 years, I've seen it happen where children, adult children, either need to retire early or take a different position, reduction in hours, so that they could provide those hours, those care hours for their parents. And it's always a difficult situation because, you know, your parents took care of you, and so now, and sure, they had their comments about you as a child, you know, that stubborn, you don't listen, you don't go to bed on time. And so now, as the child, you have to have the same conversations with your parents that, Dad, you need to take your medication at 4 p.m. and you need to have it with applesauce. You have to go to bed on time, Dad, because when you don't, you're a mess the next day. And you have to listen. You have to follow these rules. Otherwise, your health and your outcome is not going to be as good as what is recommended on what you need to do. And it tends to be very difficult conversations. And you have the same, now you have the parent who wants to be as independent as possible. They certainly don't want their children to tell them when they need to go to bed. And it comes to this heading where it gets to be very complex and there's emotions involved, and it's just a difficult situation.
Darla, is that a problem that we can address with money? I mean, is it just a matter of paying better? Is that how we're going to get more people to work for elder care facilities and businesses?
You would wish that money was the only thing, but money is certainly a big piece of it. The challenge with money is a typical nursing home operating budget, 70% of that is salary and benefits. So the major part of our expenses are related to staffing. And in nursing homes, the average nursing home has 54% of their residents who depend on Medicaid to provide or to pay for their services. And as hard as legislators have worked in the last few years to try to bring the reimbursement level up, we are still losing over $52 a day per resident per day for each resident that is on Medicaid. And so the dollars aren't there. It means the private pay residents are having to supplement to make up for that. And so it makes it very difficult to keep up with wages with for-profit entities that can raise their rates to raise the wages.
But in those cases, that burden then falls on the families or the patient or the clients themselves, right? Can they afford to pay that?
For the private pay people? Yeah, the higher you raise the rates for the private pay, the faster they're going to end up on Medicaid, and the higher our Medicaid population will be.
So, Mike, that's a kind of a segue into your new innovation into your business, trying to find a way of supplementing that human care. How do you recommend that we do that, or what kinds of things are you exploring to add to the people?
Yeah, so I kind of did the same thing. I've always felt like I've paid more than other home health agencies, and past June I started a pilot program I created a new position called the community caregiver consultant, and with starting pay at $16 an hour for every caregiver. And I quickly found out that it was not a money thing. It was a number thing, that we just don't have enough people to take care of the exponential growth of the aging population. And so throughout being the owner of the home health agency, I've had plenty of experience taking care of people. So during this whole venture, I've been a caregiver myself. And I think through that, I've learned a lot of the dynamics of caregiving and when a family member is providing care. And I've also identified that my best caregiver is someone over the age of 60. But sometimes those caregivers have physical limitations. And so I was taking care of a gentleman in Viborg. He has Parkinson's and ALS, lived on the farm. All his kids were grown up, moved out of town, just him and his wife on the farm. Same kind of thing. He didn't want to leave the farm, and I didn't blame him. Going out there, just beautiful farm. And so his wife was taking care of him. She was the primary caregiver, but she was getting burnt out. And so they brought us in, and I was his first caregiver because I wanted to meet him, and mentally extremely sharp. He could tell me every stat from the Twins game the previous night, and it was amazing. And he was tech savvy too. He had visual text, so he could look at the monitor and be able to visualize, and he was quick at it. He could do a couple sentences in a couple minutes. And I got to talking with him about his needs and what kind of technology he needed. And he really needed something that could physically help him get out of the chair, physically provide some assistance while walking. He was prone to falls, but he didn't really need much assistance. He just needed minimal assistance, just assistance enough where I'm sure Darla sees this 100 times a day, a CNA walking with a resident. The resident has a gait belt on. The CNA has one hand on the gait belt, and really that's all the assistance you need. And if there's a fall, if there's a trip, the CNA is going to dramatically reduce the damage of the resident, and really help eliminate big fall injuries. So through all that, I started doing some research on if there was any physically assistive robots, and I couldn't find anything. And I was looking for this specific gentleman, and I couldn't find anything. So finally, I said, you know, this is what they need, and I sketched it down on a piece of paper. Something that could physically assist, something that could help him get out of his chair, and also provide walking assistance, and then reduce fall damage. And I did that for a couple of reasons. One, because of the caregiver shortage. But two, if my best caregivers had physical limitations, then if I created a robot that could physically assist this person, they can still be there as a caregiver on top of that, to provide that additional support, that emotional support, that scheduling support, that camaraderie, and entertainment, you know, playing cards or puzzles or whatnot. And so that's how I invented Rose, was being in there as a caregiver and figuring out not only what the industry needed, but what these clients needed to combat the exponential growth of the aging population. So, and as I built it, I've been able to get a lot more data on really the troubles that are ahead. And the Bureau of Labor is already estimating in 5 years that there'll be 8 million unfilled caregiving jobs. That's astonishing. And it's something that and it's not just a United States problem. It is a global problem. And so it's something that that I think innovation in aging, we need more of it. And hopefully Rose can be a big part of that.
Would this be a good time to
Yeah.
run the video? And maybe some of you may have seen this story on Callow News recently, but this kind of
Health company, a Sioux Falls man now has his own patent as he turns his focus to robotics to help care for the elderly. The goal of his invention in tonight's Your Money Matters. In his years as a caregiver and home health provider, Mike Bankowski came to a stark realization.
With the human caregiver shortage that we're having, at some point, we're going to need a robot to take care of us.
Bankowski says within 5 years, the Bureau of Labor expects to have 8 million unfilled caregiving jobs across the country.
The fact that we have a caregiver shortage now, we're only at the tip of the iceberg.
How can I help, Mr. Banks? That's what led him to create Rose, named for his mom, a longtime caregiver.
Rose is a physically and socially assistive robotic walker, and it's intended to be able to holistically care for someone in their home.
From dispensing medication to calling loved ones and preventing falls, the goal is to have Rose do just about everything an in-home caregiver provides.
Navigate around a room and drive around, and it has arms that are able to come up and meet a person's waist and then maneuver on multiple axes to try to match their movement and aid them as they're going from sitting to standing up and vice versa.
While Bankowski's experience as a caregiver is the inspiration behind the design.
When I invented Rose, I knew that I had to find people that could help me build it. I was amazed that
those people were right here in South Dakota.
He's now working with students at SDSU, DSU, and USD to help make Rose a reality.
It was a really interesting opportunity to work on a project from like the first stages of design.
While this first prototype is rather large, the goal over the next couple years of development is to get all of Rose's functions into a normal-sized walker.
Ideally, versions on the road will be able to go outside, be able to store itself in a vehicle, go wherever the user wants to go.
It is a pretty impressive invention. He says that the students that began developing Rose started just earlier this year. It's a process that will continue through many grants Rose has already qualified for. Bankowski hopes to have a commercial product that is FDA approved, ready within 3 years.
So Mike, let's just give us a little view of the future here. What are the next steps, and what are the big challenges that you're facing in getting a functional version of Rose into the market?
So I do want to give a shout out to Gary Archibald. He just retired. He was the SBIR director in South Dakota, and he's really helped on this journey. In fact, Gary is the one that realized that SDSU was really advancing their robot development and robot technology, and SDSU has been part of a couple of NASA competitions now. They've done well in those. And we went up to get a tour, and I was overly impressed with what SDSU was doing. And that is incredibly painful to say as a University of South Dakota graduate. But I had told Gary early on, I'm born and raised in South Dakota. The only time I left was for the Air Force. And ideally, I would like to do all development of Rose right here in South Dakota, just because I have a good feeling of the needs in South Dakota, not only in urban, but in rural health. And so I really wanted to do everything here in South Dakota. But it probably won't be the case because we're not prepared for a healthcare robotic industry. And so I've started to work with companies in Minnesota, and one in general, a company called Lightrun. They are, it's a group of engineers that created this really innovative rehab machine that uses spacesuit technology. So you put these pants on, they inflate them, so it's like you're walking on water, and it's a really incredible medical device for rehab. And they've gotten vets up walking that haven't walked for 7 years. And so utilizing their help, because they're extremely brilliant when it comes to engineering, and that is my weakness. It'll be some combination of South Dakota and Minnesota. And so now where we're at in development is we built the Rose 1.0 prototype in 10 weeks. It was pretty amazing. It is Rose XL is what we call it. But we really wanted to test capabilities. And with Rose XL, we were able to lift 90 pounds off the ground without changing anything with the chassis and stability. All four wheels stayed on the ground, and we were able to lift 90 pounds in the air. They have a video in that story of me using Rose. And so I've done a bunch of tests with Rose, leaning back, using it, and it's held me up. And so having that, the Rose XL first, really kind of got me going on, yeah, this is doable. This is capable. But it's going to take advanced development, because these robotic arms that are on rows are unlike any other arms that have been developed. And so it's novel technology that even the MIT engineers, or you name it, it's new to them as well. So, so right now we're in a capital raising venture. We have a couple home run capital out there to really kind of get a big capital push. But we, and the reason we're doing that now is we have applied for some federal grants. Our first federal grant that we applied for was last month, and it was with the National Institute of Health and the National Institute of Aging, which this year they always send out their top 5 R&D topics. Number 1 is Alzheimer's, and number 2 is physically assistive robots, because they know, the National Institute of Aging knows, that we have this big gap, and at some point we will need robots to take care of us, because frankly there won't be anybody else. So with the National Institute of Aging, hopefully we get funded by that, but we won't know for another month if we've been accepted, and then funding won't happen until April. And so we kind of have this funding gap that is crucial, because we have 3 years to get this fully developed to time FDA approval with the device. And so that's why we're raising capital, and we're working on ROSE 2.0 right now, which is a smaller version. We're already kind of getting down to almost walker size, and so it's exciting, but it's a process.
Mm-hmm. So Darla, I mean, it is exciting. It sounds great. I'm just on my own experience. Just 2 things you can count on: it's going to cost more than you think, and it's going to take longer than you think. But so with that out there someplace, and the promise of technology solving some of these labor issues, we still have the gap of the next few years, and we're still seeing an increase in the number of people who need assistance and who are aging into this customer group, and we also need more people to provide that service, or to provide the care. One of the things that Mike mentioned was the difference between rural and urban, and in some parts of the country, Sioux Falls is considered rural, but here in South Dakota, there's a significant difference between what's available in Sioux Falls and what's available out in the rest of the state. How do you see those challenges affecting us, and what do you think some of the solutions are going to be to that?
The rural areas certainly are much more challenged. You will find have seen the trends as people get older moving to the urban areas, whether it's Rapid City or Sioux Falls, which are the most logical rural or urban areas. But that means that staff as well are harder to find in the urban areas or the rural areas. We've had 7 nursing homes have closed in the last 5 years, and all but one of those have been in the rural areas. And the big piece of that is staffing. So the rural areas really are challenged with staffing. And as people move to more populated areas, it's going to get harder and harder for the rural areas.
Is there a cost difference that they have that also exacerbates that problem in the rural areas? Are they don't have all the same services, or they're going to have to pay for more, bring it from a greater distance? Is that just going to accelerate the problem in some of the smaller communities?
It does. if a community doesn't have an assisted living center and it's strictly nursing home care, then someone is paying for probably more care than they need, but the nursing home is the only facility, the only center that can meet their needs. And so more assisted living certainly, as we've seen assisted livings grow, has helped in the rural areas. Takes less staff, not as costly as nursing homes.
Mike, have you seen the demand for home health care grow in some of the rural parts of the state, as well as say here in Sioux Falls or in Rapid City?
Definitely, especially people that are on the farm. They don't typically want to move to town, but recently, the last 2-3 years, they really haven't had that option to move to the community nursing home because staffing, or probably mainly staffing. And so they've had to, if they wanted to or needed to move to a nursing home, they were going to Sioux Falls, Aberdeen, Mitchell, Rapid City. And that's such a difficult situation because then you're away from family. If you and the spouse are moving, but only you are going to the nursing home, then now there's the spouse has to, be in a new home, or and it's difficult. And so, that's the other reason that I'm excited for Rose's development is not only, our first goal is to be able to help people in the home, just because it's an easier setting. If you have a robot in your home, like your Roomba, that's a little bit easier because mapping, navigation, there isn't a lot of other things you got to deal with on a vision wise for the robot. But in a nursing home, that's completely different because now you have other residents, you have things moving, you have things in hallways that weren't there an hour ago that now Rose has to identify and help the resident navigate around. But the goal is that once we figure out Rose in the home is to have Rose in nursing homes. Because if a CNA doesn't have to help a resident get off the bed and walk to breakfast, they can. It works better for complexity and working with higher acuity residents, and so it's a huge need in both rural and urban, and Darla's 100% right. It's a struggle bus right now in rural health.
Yeah, I can see I understand what you're saying about the carts and other people in the nursing home or care facility, but they also have wider hallways, and it's all on one level. So it might be a trade-off there, where I would think in a facility, Darla, do you see a value to having some of this technology? I mean, you've already adopted technologies over the last 10 years. How else are we going to solve this problem?
I think the more we can use technology to help our staff be more efficient in their work, the better. I mean, to have vitals trees that will monitor a resident's vitals and then automatically chart that to their electronic medical records so nurses don't have to do that. To have devices that will detect falls or detect movement to help staff be more aware are certainly going to help. So anything we can do in technology to help our staff be more efficient is greatly needed. And to have a Rose that would allow staff, when you've got a resident who needs 2 people to assist them with some morning cares, that as the cares get to a certain point, one of the staff can move on to serve someone else and Rose can take it from there, certainly would be beneficial. Yeah.
Just during our last few minutes here, I wanted to just touch on a few other questions that I wondered. It'd be great if everybody had the same diagnosis. If we understand that people age, and we all have this image of the sort of sweet old folks who play bingo and want to sing hymns and all of that, but not everybody's like that. There are other diagnoses that talk a little bit about the subset of people who may be suffering from dementia or some aggressive behavior that doesn't allow them to be in the general group. How are those things complicating the challenges that you face?
There are some of the residents that we serve that type of technology will never be able to meet their needs. Dementia would be a real challenge for those residents to understand what that truly is all about. Someone with dealing with behavioral situations, whatever it is that's causing it, you truly need someone able to intervene who is educated and taught how to intervene. And so there are situations where you wouldn't be able to. There are other challenging populations. Someone who is obese, they are a challenge to be able to take care of. And so if you could provide the support of a Rosie to be that third person helping out, maybe that's where it's needed. I know that's one area where it's hard to find a place to move someone who is obese because of the specialized equipment that's needed that is costly, or if it takes 3 people to assist that resident, they don't have the staff to be able to say, yes, we can safely meet your needs. And so if there's technology to be that third support, that certainly could be an option as well.
So now we're not just talking about the aging population, but the obesity epidemic in this country. These things have consequences and they accumulate.
If I could just touch on the Alzheimer's too, is that, although Rose, we're focusing on physically assistance first, but another part of Rose is that it'll be a holistic robot and also be able to socially assist people. Now, I agree. There's some capability limitations on Rose when you're dealing with people that are, advanced dementia in memory care. But one of the things that we're going to work on, and a lot of tech companies are working on this, is can AI take care of somebody with Alzheimer's? And it's something that we are going to put a lot of funds into development, that side of Rose too, because the National Institute of Aging has that as their #1 research topic. But being able to have Rose next to you, and you can't remember what you were doing, and Rose can say, "Oh, you were looking for the butter," or having that type of AI relationship that that Rose knows that 35 times during the day, you're going to mention this certain sentence. You're going to say, "Oh, when I used to drive my 57 Chevy," and then Rose can say, "Yeah, it was red, and you love driving with the top down." "Oh, yes, I did. I did." So being able to interact by knowing, the experiences before, and Rose knowing, she's a computer, and knowing that, okay, these are the sentences that trigger the user, or these are the things I need to say to maybe bring the user back to what they were trying to do. And yeah, so I think there's a huge opportunity on a technology point for memory care too.
Well, I wanted to thank both of you for enlightening us today, for being part of this Rotary program. I'm excited to see how Rose develops and how the future of this technology and adaptive technology applies. I'm so grateful that there are facilities like Dow Rummel and people who will serve and continue to provide that care, both at home and at Dow Rummel and other organizations in town. I would just recognize that there's no chance of that being about Dow Rummel being put out of business by Rose, because it's clearly not. It's a complementary technology.
100%.
So help me to thank our guests today. And
Thanks, Joel.
I'm grateful to all of this. Am I on? Am I on? Yes. Well, I truly am grateful to all three of you, bringing an issue that can feel very overwhelming and bringing a light of optimism through innovation certainly leaves me with that sense of optimism moving forward. As we look at next week, October 18th, we're going to talk about the importance of arts in economic development. And if you haven't updated your calendar yet for October 25th, we will be on the road meeting at the Belbus at the Washington Pavilion. Thank you all for being here. Rotary is adjourned.